Hello and welcome back to the Single Malt Frontier, where we explore the edge of innovation in American single malt whiskey. Here on the show, we do a little bit of tasting and a lot of talking. Usually, we talk about whiskey, but the best thing about whiskey is the conversations that we get to have along the way, and we get to talking about a little bit of everything. Today, we are celebrating the release of Westland Garryana 10 with Westland's business development manager, Ana Hinz. Welcome, Ana.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get into your introduction, I just want to say I believe this is my first episode back hosting my own podcast since I went on paternity leave. If I'm a little rusty, that is why. However, I have streamed a few times since the baby was born, so I haven't completely forgotten how to sit in this chair. I just may have forgotten how to actually run the show. So we'll see how it goes. This is episode 49, and so we are thinking about the big episode 50 coming up, and Phil and I have a plan for that. Our plan is... and it's going to sound very ambitious, and we may utterly fail to fit it in any reasonable length of time. But Phil and I are going to go through our entire back catalog of episodes and attempt to make an infinity bottle blend from everything we've featured on the show so far. And we're going to have to not talk about any of it in order to actually fit that in. So if you want to see us... I just did a stray click and managed to... Welcome, Bartlemay. Thank you for joining in. See, I told you I forgot how to host this thing. Nerds, yeah. So we're going to try it. That's our plan for episode 50. And we're going to do it live. And I think we're going to reminisce about how the show has gone for the last 2.5 years, basically. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But because we all have a tight out today, I'm going to leave all the other news aside and just get us into Garryana 10. So Ana, without further ado, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. As you said, I'm the business development manager, which is a nice vague title. So what that actually entails is I handle our export markets. I work with our independent bottlers and selling casks to them. And then I also do project management at the distillery for whiskey releases and working with all the different departments on various projects. So it's an interesting smattering of things, really, but I love all of it.
Yeah, speaking of the independent bottlers, I think one of the ways that Westland initially got on my radar was actually via Single Cask Nation, the One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. And I believe you've been on there a couple of times. So I actually got to hear you chatting about the whiskey before I actually met you at the distillery itself. Independent bottlers are a huge part of how I got into American single malt personally. Lost Lantern at the forefront of that. Well, we got into it. Hey, by the way, we have a new show. It's called 3 Guys, 1 Grain. We did our first stream of that last week, and we talked about how we got into American single malt, among other things. So if you want more things to listen to, and you're not tired of hearing my voice, there's more things to listen to. But I think Westland also was the very first taste I'd ever had of American single malt whiskey. I didn't know that it was a significant thing, like a whole thing, right? The whole movement. I didn't know at the time. It was just the Barrel Thief had a pandemic tasting. It was the Calere first edition tasting and the new Westland flagship, which were both new then. And if I remember right, I believe that was late 2020. So I didn't yet know the significance that American single malt would have in my life, but I was very impressed. I thought that the philosophy behind the Calere, the idea of having flavor grains and locally cultivated grains, as opposed to let's just make alcohol and then age it and see what happens. I liked taking that agency. I liked bringing that terroir, for lack of a better term, into whiskey. And I think that made me kind of fall in love with the Westland philosophy and indirectly with American single malt as a category. So thank you so much for that.
It's funny you say that because Westland was certainly my first American single malt. I came to the whiskey world. I'll try not to. I have a call with him on Thursday. So
yeah, he told me a couple hours ago. I was like, oh, cool. We're just like the same podcast now.
It's fine. We're just kicking it back and forth, but this will just give more information. So that's all. But Westland was my first American single malt. I started drinking Scotch first and foremost and was learning a lot about that and dove into the deep end there. And I went to, I believe it was a Seattle Whiskey Collective event eons ago at Barrel Thief. And I had some Westland there. And I remember speaking to some of the folks there and they said, oh, you have to try this. This is really important. And I was like, okay, oh, it's local, cool. I'll go check it out. And then I began attending all of the different events that they have, instructional events, tours, things like that, going
Mhm.
to the room regularly. And it was really impactful. And this was obviously well before I worked there, but it was the same kind of entry point. And I think definitely changed my view on single malt whiskey overall, and kind of that innovative viewpoint. And then definitely colored my view when I began to visit Scotch distilleries and everything as well. And be like, oh, okay, kind of understanding where that all comes from and where it can go.
Yeah, that's a really good point. American single malt did shift my perspective on single malt, because when you start with single malt, in my case, it was Scotch and Japanese whiskey, and they were different, but also kind of the same. Uh, there's a long history, and they've really refined it to a certain profile that they want, and that's being really reductionist. Because if you actually get into going deep on any of the distilleries in either of those countries, you'll find big differences. But then when you think about like, oh, what is single malt if it's done by Australia? What is single malt if it's done by Israel? What is single malt if it's done by India, the United States, and especially United States with a rich distilling history, rich whiskey history, um, the new oak and everything. And what are people going to take as the quintessential what makes American single malt American, and how do we do single malt in an American way? And what's lovely about that is that everybody's gotten a different answer to that question. I think Westland has a few, and the Outpost range sort of highlights what those are. But New Oak is, you're not afraid of it, but it's also not by definition what you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's really interesting. And just as you look across the line of products, well, I know the flagship was addressing this problem of like, there's no one thing that is what is Westland in the past, right? And so you bring in the flagship and say, okay, this is Westland. But then you still have, the beer cask finished, the wine cask finished, Caleri, Solum, Garryana, and all the single casks, and everything is just so different. So if you had to say what makes Westland Westland at this point in time, what would you say?
Oh, you're starting off with the hard hitting questions, of course.
We're tight on time. We got to get right into it.
Yeah. I mean, well, if you're going to look at a constant across the board, then you'd have to say a Belgian Saison yeast, but that probably wouldn't be my first answer because that's not what comes to mind for me. But I think really it's the focus on flavor and all the different ways you can do that. I like to say that we have pulled on almost all of the levers of flavor in order to see kind of what it does, what we want to aim for, because it's all in pursuit of whiskey that people want to drink, right? Like we're not just an experiment for an experiment's sake. We are constantly reminded that we are not a research facility. We are here to make whiskey that people want to purchase and enjoy. So it's not just that, but I would say the pursuit of flavor that's reflective of our place and where we come from, really.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say, speaking of place, one of the things that is unique to the Pacific Northwest, and while not necessarily unique to Westland, but has become a big part of your whiskey portfolio, is the use of Garryana oak or Oregon oak. Mm-hmm. How did you guys come to using Oregon oak specifically?
It's something that was, now granted, I wasn't there for this. Let's be, these are what I've been told by my colleagues. But when they started the process of this, it was part of that, trying to look at all the different whiskey making ingredients really of our area and what is available to us here that really speaks to being in Washington, being in the Pacific Northwest. And we're lucky enough to have a native oak species that can reflect that. But it's, we're not the only American single malt that does that. But it's certainly something like something that really is impactful because of the flavor bomb that Garryana is. But yeah, they started that process, years and years ago, and figuring out how to find coopers that were going to make those barrels from a very difficult wood and finding that wood. So there's an entire process that exists where we work with this company that's in Portland. Bartolome can speak to this too, I'm sure, but they do reclaimed wood, find different trees that are going to, be cut down anyway because they might be fall on somebody's property or something like that, because it's something that's not generally grown like white American oak. It's not used as an ornamental tree. It takes 150 years to get to something, so that's too long. But then that wood is then aged and air dried, seasoned, and then sent off to different coopers to make the barrels. So there's one that we use, Moreau, but also there's Oregon Barrel Works that's down in Oregon, which are fantastic as well. So there's a number of different coopers that we've used. So we have different Garryana barrels in our rack house as well. And each of them are very unique, because already Garryana is a tricky, I shouldn't say tricky. It's a very bold flavor, right? We all know this after seeing and tasting all the different additions and through other distilleries using it as well. But each of these barrels, they weren't grown in the same environment. They weren't air dried for the same amount of time. So they're going to have different tannin levels in it. They're going to have different types of sawing that was done. It really needs to be quarter sawn. It can't be flat sawn because otherwise it warps. And we've had warped heads in the rack houses, which leads to leaking and maybe not ideal situations. But I'm not sure if that answers your question. I kind of went on there a bit, but it has been a story that has been passed along in these past 10 years of how longer than that, I suppose, really, and how we got there.
For sure. I would say it answers the question and then some. And as long as we're talking about Garryana oak, we might as well pour our first.
We should be, sipping on it.
Feature dram. Sure. Yep, you've already done. All right, so I'm behind the game.
Well, the thing that I especially like about Garryana, in addition to it being extremely flavorful, is that it's very changeable in the glass, more than I've experienced with other whiskeys. So if you let it sit, if you can, let it sit for 20, 30 minutes or longer, it changes from when you do a fresh pour. And do that even side by side. The nose is vastly different, which I think is super cool because it's not predictable in that way.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad. And so that tells me that it's also going to change in the bottle a bit as the bottle gets lower. So I'm glad that I've taken an archive sample of this already, because which is the thing that I'm trying to do now. I'm sure we've all had bottles that have like, man, that was better when I first opened it, right? I don't want this to be one of them. Not because it was, it's not more expensive. I mean, we're going to get to this point eventually. It's not more expensive than the rest of the Garryanas, but it is dear because, unfortunately, a number of them have been lost. I might as well just segue right on into that now. So we can't talk about Garryana 10 without talking about the what they're calling the Westland heist.
Yeah. Elephant in the room. Here we go. All right. Let me take a sip
the elephant in the room. We got we'll get it out of the way. Have a big drink.
Get it out of the way now, and then we can focus on happier things.
Right. Like I feel like part of it is, the audience knows that this happened, and if we don't talk about it, we're going to look like we're trying to hide something. And I think more than anything, I mean, I've heard some conspiracy theories, and you can imagine why. And I think it's worth saying the things that need to be said so that people understand that this was not in any way intentional.
Oh my gosh.
Or right. So that's one of the things that people have been saying. Inside job. Oh, they're trying to spin it in a marketing way to make a big splash. I think that's an extremely cynical view of the whiskey industry. I don't support or agree with any of those opinions whatsoever. I just want to say that up front. I do understand the impulse to say like, oh, there were forged papers that allowed for a truck to pick up an order that was not intended for that truck. That sounds an awful lot like someone had inside knowledge of what this transfer order might have looked like.
Can I
go ahead? Yeah.
Not because I'm a subject matter expert, because I'm not, but I work in a warehouse. We do a lot of freight shipments. Trucks come, they have paperwork. I will tell you right now, there are 4 carriers that drop things off, pick things up. Their paperwork looks identical with the exception of a little logo at the top. If you know what company is going to be running those trucks, you can make documents that look right. And even if you don't have the right company, the guys on the loading dock have a million and one things that they are paying attention to at any given moment. They're moving stuff around. It is delicate work because we're talking about cases full of glass bottles. And as hardy as these glass bottles are, it takes a real bad bump. And I have seen whiskey bottles break. I'm sure that the people working in these facilities are aware that they don't want that to happen, so they've got to move a little bit slower. They've got a million and one things that they've got to pay attention to. And, at the end of the day, they're expecting a truck to pick up a shipment. A truck arrives, they give them the paperwork. If it looks right, there's no real solid way for anybody to say that it was an inside job, because there's no way that they can put themselves in the shoes of somebody who's got to handle all this paperwork day in, day out. And it doesn't matter how vigilant you are, a decent forgery doesn't take a whole lot with that paperwork. It's something that is bound to happen to somebody eventually. The same thing happened with a whole truckload of pro audio equipment that was bound from a distributor to a retailer a couple of years ago. It happens. It is unusual. It is rare, but especially with high dollar value items such as, hard to get expensive whiskey, hard to get high-end audio equipment. It is a weak point in the distribution chain, and it is one that is extremely difficult to armor, as it were.
It is an ongoing investigation, so I can't comment too much on this, but I can tell you that the trucker did have the right paperwork. It was double checked. So it's not a fault of our team in that. It was something that was unfortunate, but it is not unusual. So just like a month after this, I saw an article about Guy Fieri's had 2 truckloads of tequila that were stolen in the same way. I just saw an article yesterday that there's a distributor that is suing, I think they're suing a trucking company because an entire truckload of Maker's Mark was stolen last year in this same way. So it's not hyper unusual. It's just not usually publicized so much. And it just happens to be just really unfortunate that it is something that is almost a stain on our Garryana 10 because we're really excited about it. And it's something that we obviously weren't going to make more of for this particular batch, right? So we're really trying to focus on what we do have and the fact that we can continue to share that with our fans and move forward from there while the investigation takes place. So we'll see what happens. But certainly not an inside job. I did see something that was like, it was for the insurance money. I'm like, you do not know how insurance works then, because it only helps you with perhaps the value of it, but it doesn't help you with any revenue lost. So that is a pointless endeavor. We'd much rather have the whiskey, I promise you. That took out a whole bunch of production that we had already done, especially with some of the other SKUs that were on the truck as well. So it's, something we would have much rather had not happened. But here we are. We have what we have, and we're happy that we were able to get the rest of it out to all the states that could. But I can say that the Washington allocation was not affected. So it was just the rest of the country that was affected in terms of allocation. So sorry, guys. Make extra friends in Washington State to cover there.
Yep. Although, as we've talked about, we went at length on this on the 3 Guys 1 Grain podcast. Don't try to sell Garryana 10 because you're going to have a bad time. right? Those are all going to be highly scrutinized.
It's an interesting thing to consider for a number of reasons, but also what's kind of funny is those of the SKUs that were on the truck that was stolen, most of it was not in export markets. So if you see it outside of the US, well, there you go. That was a stolen bottle. So.
Oh yeah, okay, that's convenient.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a nefarious way.
No.
Yeah. But it happened. But we're just going to move forward and do what we can with what we have,
Yeah.
So yeah,
really sorry to bring the downer so early.
No, it's okay. You did it early, so
let's
focus on the happy things, because we do have Garryana 10 in our glass.
Yes.
Did I buy a few extra for myself to have on my shelf? Yes, I did, because of the limited quantity. So let's talk about it, though.
Yeah. I do want to just add one more thing in favor of, like, hey, anyone who thinks this is an inside job. I mean, you're going to be talking about individual people who did or did not know, but if there was any chance that this was not a surprise to anyone, I got a text from a friend, another media person, another whiskey media person, who I won't identify, but he says he was actually with Jason Moore when Jason Moore found out about the theft, and Jason was white as a sheet, and that's not the sort of reaction you can fake. And he said that they were immediately talking about, how can we spin this to actually make, a bit more of a marketing splash, like lean into it. This is a thing that happened. Don't try to hide it. And so we can all see that's what's happened. And you did it so well that people think it looks organized. That's a compliment to the marketing team.
Doing what we can. What we can.
But anyway, let us move on.
Yeah.
So Garryana 10, the 10 stands for 10 years old, and of course the 10th edition. And from speaking with you off the record, I know that there's quite a lot of stories behind the liquid in this bottle. So I wonder if you would hazard to share, since we don't have Shane to tell us. You're gonna have to do your best Shane impersonation.
Oh boy, hang on, let me get into my Shane. No, he's great. I hope you will get to have him on at some point. He's a wealth of stories and knowledge, and he's really the man behind all the, blending that you're tasting, all of this final orchestration of the whiskey that you have in your glass. So, the story that you're referring to, I believe, is about Garryana 1, and 2016 that came out. I waited in line for that. It was so good. But the story that I learned when I started working at Westland was that the original, what we call a dump list, but the harvest list that got sent to the rack house back when it was down in Hoquiam, Washington, which is different than where it is now. But the team down there, Matt Hoffman, sent off the list, and it was just a list of cask numbers, and it was misread. And they put together the vatting, they dumped it in the tank, but they included one cask that was a triple distilled port finished whiskey in it, which just completely blew up the entire thing. That was not the intent. That was not the flavor they were going for, because it was cask 5 instead of like 5 malts in. And so that was a mistake. So that whiskey then was put back into cask, because we couldn't use it for Garryana 1. And so Shane's first task was to recreate from the sample that we had left over from Matt Hoffman, to recreate Garryana 1 as best he could with the whiskey that he had available to him still. And so he did that. And that was his first blending project. I think he did a fabulous job. I think we can all agree. And it's gone on from there. So what happened to those casks that still had the kind of messed up Garryana 1? Some of that went into Garryana 3. That entire bottling needs a flow chart. It's kind of crazy. When Shane showed me his staff notes for it, it was like multiple pages. There's a lot of, it feels like red string is needed for this kind of thing. It was very complex. But there still was some left over. So he actually put some in this vatting, which I think is pretty cool. It's a nice tie and a through line that there's still remnants of Garryana 1 and Garryana 2 that are in this as well, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's very cool. Being able to And how old? I mean, you don't have. So this is the first age statement, and it's
Mhm.
a 2-digit age statement. But sort of like on paper, there was age statements behind all of these releases in the past. Remind me, how old was Garryana 1?
Oh, if you give me a second, I can find out. I don't remember. Hold,
I don't want to
please.
put you on the spot.
No, I
But
have.
like,
That's okay. Don't worry. I
okay,
have the information. I just need a second to pull it up because
okay, cool.
luckily, what's really awesome is Shane puts together staff notes for us for every single. Oh, do I have it? No, I don't have it. I lied. I have starting out from Garryana 5. Nope. But he puts together these staff notes for us, which have all of the details and specs. So everyone, include front of house, any of the sales team, anybody who wants it on our staff can have access to it and be able to speak about our whiskey and be very informed, which I think is quite cool. But so I don't actually have that information. You'll have to wait for Shane for that. I'm sorry. I can get it to you after though.
Yeah, no worries. I'll definitely take it afterwards. I'll put it in the show notes below. Let's take a quick break and read some comments. So Gandhi Road says, cheers, looking forward to hear about the 10 years. So hopefully we're getting you what you want to know.
Starting to.
And the Bartlemay says a bunch of makers was just stolen. So it happens more often than people think. So we're still on that. We're not going to leave it entirely behind.
I will say that Bartlemay did say that as you were saying that had just happened.
That's true. But for the timeline of the podcast, yeah, I wanted to bring back the comments. So sorry, there's a bit of noise in my background.
I'm in the weird position of I'm noticing this and sipping it, and I'm in the position of I've actually worked with Garryana oak as a woodworker, and literally the strongest note that I get is literally the sawdust that coated the inside of my nose the last time I was working with it.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would be. I understand now. You can speak to this perhaps. Then I understand it to be a very difficult wood and that it's very hard but brittle in a way, so it's difficult to work with from that standpoint.
It is a little bit brittle. The piece of Garryana oak that I had did come from the personal collection of Joseph O'Sullivan.
Oh,
and it was hard on my tools, but it wasn't actually that bad to work with. The worst part was it creates a very fine dust. Like even like using a skew chisel to like get nice curls, it produces a fine dust because it kind of crumbles. And it gets everywhere. It smells fantastic, by the way. So while like Quercus alba has a really strong, like bitter vanilla, like if you've ever like accidentally bitten a vanilla bean pod and gotten that like really like sharp bitter note, that is the core of white oak. Whereas Garryana oak, as bitter as it is a much more sort of sweet mineralic note.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my experience.
What I think is interesting from a chemical composition standpoint is in terms of the things that we're generally looking at when you look at barrel makeup. You have your vanillins, you have eugenol content, you have guaiacols, you have the cis-lactones. So that's where you're going to get kind of that coconutty quality, and Garryana does not have that. It does have a higher than typical eugenol content, so the clove note is like super high, which is where that really the baking spice, but not in a cinnamon way, comes through super strongly. And the guaiacol note also adds what it kind of comes across in this like savory, almost spice way. Savory, almost smoky way. I mean, so people like I had multiple people say to me like, "Oh, this is peated. This one, like, no, there's no peat in this."
Yeah,
like,
I definitely thought, before the official release notes were out, I tried this 2 weeks early. I thought, oh wow, there must be like a little bit of peat in that, because that wouldn't be the first time that Garryana has had a peated component.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, not at all. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see. But that's, I mean, there's multiple ways that could come through, but that is one. Is definitely that guaiacal note. And I think those are kind of the two biggest characteristics in my experience with tasting it with our whiskey. I think it's very interesting how it can change with obviously the character of different distillates. But for us, that's how it kind of showcases. I did find, while I don't have age, I do have this really interesting comparison from Shane about all the different Garryanas, with the percentage of Garryana in each vatting. And Garryana 1 was actually the lowest. It was 18% of the vatting was with Garryana casks, which is kind of interesting. So people who like to say that was all Garryana, I'm sorry to disappoint. It was not. But yeah, this one sits at 32%. 33% of it is Garryana oak barrels. But some of the other additions that we've had more recently have had a higher number in there, but it doesn't necessarily indicate that the flavor is going to be more or less, because each of the casks are so different. So that's something to sort of keep in mind. But it's still interesting to look at from a data perspective.
Okay, so I know that Garryana is not like it is the front and center. It's the featured note. It's the featured wood, but it is overpowering if you use new Garryana oak in a large quantity in a whiskey. McCarthy's gets away with being only Garryana because it's refill upon refill. It's like third, fourth, fifth fill Garryana most of the time.
And they have this beautifully peaty smoked whiskey that can stand up to that.
Right. It's punchy with punchy. They meet well.
Yeah.
But when you've got an unpeated spirit, the Garryana can be overpowering. So I know this because thanks to the Garryana symposiums, I've gotten to taste here's a first fill Garryana sample, just so you have a compass. You got to be careful with that because it'll blind your palate to everything that's going on with the Garryana in the actual releases.
I want to try some.
Everybody does. Everybody does. I promise you, that is like the number one question. Anytime I'm at a festival or something or working a table, that is the number one question I get. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I did that too. That was one of the first things when I started. I was like, hey, Shane, can I try this? And it is astringent. Whew. Or maybe even tannic might be the better term for that. Those are not exactly interchangeable, but it can be, yes, aggressive. But I think it's also interesting to see how they act when they are refills. Like we had a single cask, a hand fill at the distillery in the springtime or so that was a peated and a second fill Garryana. Oh my gosh, absolutely stunning. Just like gave enough of a flavor to it.
Was that peated?
Yes. I'm fairly.
I have it.
Yeah, I was like, please. I was like, look at it. I don't remember the cask number. Usually, I'm pretty good at that, but I don't remember the cask number on this one. And it should say on the label, so please prove me right.
3205.
Thank you. It was the fourth one I picked up. Yeah. Peated malt, second fill Garryana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Good.
I did send Phil a sample of that. I don't suppose, Anna, you have this laying within arm's reach.
Within arm's reach, no. My whiskey
that's
cabinet
for sure
is in the other room, but yeah.
It's been a minute since I tasted this one, but that's for sure peated.
That one, I think I got us 2 bottles of that, which I don't normally do. That's like so good, and we don't have a lot. And I didn't actually ever get to get the single cask that we had out of them. But
this is Baird's peated malt, right? Which basically, so the reason I bought this is actually because I thought this would be a really fun comparison with McCarthy's. Because aside from your malt bill, like by the specs in a very roughed in way, this is essentially the same kind of thing, the same idea. Yeah. And I haven't had a chance to do that comparison yet. So I cannot tell you my thoughts on that. I'll do a review or something. But this smells lovely. And that sort of is a segue to my next question. How much of this blend is a refill Garryana as opposed to the first fill Garryana? Okay,
let's see. So I have first fill. Oh no, that's new Gary Oak. Okay, second fill is 10% is Gary Oak. And 22% is new.
Okay, so still relatively heavy on the new, but it's only a third of the blend, so everything else is in there.
Yeah. Shall I rip off what else is in there just for funsies?
Yeah, let's just get all. Yeah, I mean, instead of me asking questions of it, let's just talk about this.
So what else is in there is 17% is first fill rum. 16% is second fill Cooper's Reserve. So that is a barrel that we have a lot of that we typically use in a new American oak, but then obviously reuse it. It has a heavy toast and a light char. Then 15% is first fill PX Hogshead. And then we have, the refill Gary Oak, 8% is first fill bourbon. Shane really likes to use bourbon casks to really give space in something like this, where there's a lot of flavors and it can get really punchy. So using refill bourbon is just a really excellent way to sort of spread out the notes without having to proof anything down, but still give it support, really. Yep. And then we have 6% of it is second fill Cooper Select. So that's another cask that we typically use as new and then reused from there. And that one has a light toast and a heavy char. 5% is first fill Tempranillo, which is red wine, of course. And then 2% is first fill port, which is that.
The Garryana one
remnants.
misblend.
Yeah, so the primary notes that you're really going to get in here are from the Garryana, from the rum, and some of the refill casks, but maybe even a little bit of the PX. But I think one of the things that I like the most about this vatting is that you can't really nail it down to one type of finish, because in a lot of the previous ones, not all of them, but many of the previous ones, he sort of focused on, okay, we're going to pair it with this other kind of finish and see Garryana through that lens, kind of look at that at a different facet. And this one has a mix of them in there. And I think that's really cool, because you can't go, oh, it's definitely this, definitely this. You might get components of it, but it's almost like, let's just enjoy this for what it is, this like beautiful reflection of all these different flavors without having to necessarily parse it out, or identify it in a certain way. But I think it's kind of neat. It's something where I'm still getting to know this whiskey, because we've only had it for, a week and a half now. So I'm still learning my own tasting notes that I would say about it as well.
Yeah. This is my third distinct day tasting this since I got the bottle home. So familiar environment and all that. It's been different to me every single time.
Yeah.
I took out, you saw the pictures on Instagram. I took out all my bottles of Westland and I compared it against, like, is it like, where's that coming from? Is it like that one? Is it like that one? And that's been a really fun exploration. And this is one of those things that changes a lot depending on, like you said, time in the glass matters. I've been able to leave this out for a few hours and see what it does. Usually with a cap on, because I don't want it to just evaporate out of the glass entirely, but, it does.
What kind of environment are you living in that you think it's going to evaporate immediately? It's not the desert, dude. I know you live here. Come on.
Well, 3 hours. 3 hours is a good long time for 50% to become maybe even not whiskey if you leave it out uncovered for 3 hours. But anyways, the first time I tasted it though was at Whiskies for Wildlife, surrounded by lots of vintage Scotch. And I had tried a lot of different things, and then I saw this over the table. Well, I'm here and it's here and I've got to try it. So, and funny enough, what stood out to me most on that first tasting was actually the Tempranillo and the rum cask. Something, even though it's such a subtle touch, the Tempranillo single casks are too tannic for me. They taste lovely, but they make my palate hurt. So I can't exactly enjoy that as is for me personally, but I do think it comes out there's like, you can tell where that's coming from in this. And the rum cask also, one of my favorite single casks that you have is the Mount Gay rum cask finished of the peated malt. I think that's a beautiful it's a beautiful cask. I sort of because of our McCarthy's rum cask single barrel, I sort of started collecting rum cask whiskeys. Actually, they're all still lined up over there. You can see them in camera. So those are all my rum cask whiskeys. You've got the Kilchoman and the Lagavulin and etc. And this was one of the ones that I added to the list. There's you can't quite see because it's out of focus, but there's a gap in the line, and that was the Westland bottle that I have over on my left now. So I'm really familiar with that rum cask whiskey profile now, and to me that was just really punching through. Nobody else at Whiskeys for Wildlife had a rum cask like that. So like in the context of I've tried all these things and now I've subtracted the usual tastes from the palate, what's left over? That rum cask is really singing through. But here on a different day, it's really just integrated into the whole, and every day gives me something different.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad I'm not the only one then, because I was like just thinking of this on Saturday night. I was working a festival and I was going, I don't know how to describe this one yet. Hang on, I need to take another sip because I'm not.
Yeah,
quite.
there's some whiskeys like that, right?
Yeah, which I think is just really fun. I like something that makes me go in again.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh no, I can definitely define that. Cool. Moving on. You know, like, no,
Yeah.
I definitely need to spend a little more time. Encourages contemplation, which is great.
Yeah. Oh geez. We gotta go ban somebody.
Fun.
I apologize, Doug. I have not opened Twitch on my work computer, so I can't go do that. Sorry. So
we'll see if I can remember how to do the host thing and also ban.
One of the little like mid-palate notes that has been like sort of slowly developing in my glass is sort of like a like grape skin sort of like not quite the like meaty center of, meaty, not quite the like sweeter center of the grape, but like when you've got raisins and the skin has dried and there's like a little bit of like, you know, leathery, grape skinny sort of note.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. There's something like I always hate to say this because it sounds like a bad note. This is the first time I've gotten it. Something in the vicinity of acetone, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am the king of unfortunate sounding tasting notes. I haven't gotten that one yet, but now I'm going to look for it.
But it's like it's a little bit like the Blue Gushers.
Oh man, bringing me back.
And
the
see,
blue raspberry.
I was sitting here thinking Sour Patch gummies, but after you've like slurped all the sour dusting off.
Yeah, that sounds like the same thing. I think we're tasting the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it comes across as a very bright fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Not a red fruit, but not necessarily tropical, but maybe some sort of citrus tart or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be almost bright and refreshing in that way, which is a really interesting kind of counter to the darker savory notes that you're going to get from Garryana, as well as, and I meant to talk about this too, the mix of 5 malt mash bill versus pale malt in here. And there's a mix of different pales in here as well. So you're going to get some of those darker, richer notes still from the 5 malt, but then you'll also get some brighter notes and some fruit esters from the pale malt as well. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we're talking about this particular bright note in this profile, and yet I wouldn't describe this as a bright whiskey, which works for me. I think this is a moody whiskey. This is a whiskey that has some damage, you know? Like it's got stories it wants to tell you.
It's a little bit film noir.
Yes, that
it's a little bit like our weather outside in the Pacific Northwest currently.
Yeah, it is. Talk about a sense of place.
Yeah.
It's not just the Garryana.
You got some moody clouds that may rain on you, but may not. But it looks really cool in the distance, especially over the sound. Got you. We got to have an artist on to do an interpretive sketch of our tasting notes at some point. Mm-hmm.
This could be a fun one.
I just really I like how that brightness is playing off some of the darker notes in there, and I feel like it comes through in the palate in a different fruit way. But then there's also that clove note that's sort of ever present without it being hit you over the head with the baking spice drawer that you dumped all over your face. Like it's different than that, but
yeah, it's a real subtle. You've mentioned clove a couple of times. I wouldn't have pulled that out on my own, but it's a real subtle presence there. Like the way that clove shows up in pumpkin pie.
Yeah, but if it's missing, you're like, oh, something's
Yep.
weird.
Yep.
And then there's still the finish kind of continues with that spice. And then I think, man, I'd be interested. I don't know exactly what is continuing that, but maybe it's even that Tempranillo, but some other things that are sort of just continuing the finish to just keep on going. I like that it is a full dynamic whiskey. It doesn't drop off. It's not like a bottle rocket that just sort of poof and is gone. It doesn't fall apart, which can sometimes happen with really great whiskeys. You're like, oh my gosh, this nose is incredible. And you taste it and you're like, well, that's sort of disappointing, and feel pretty pleased with Shane that this one did not do that. It delivers on the nose.
So I am minding the time, but you know what? I'm having too much fun with this one. So let's just keep talking about it. So big label refresh. People who've been fans of Garryana for a long time will recognize the slice of oak on behind the label. And this is, I don't have one handy, but the labels for Garryana have looked like this for quite a while. And that loses the wood, the personality of the whiskey that is wood, because this is it's a lovely abstract label. But actually the Solom and the Garryana were just very slightly different shades of blue.
Yeah, one was Solom was gray. They looked blue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's just printer things. So
Honestly,
I think it's lovely to bring back that wood motif on the label as well. And perfect time for it. And also we've had the wood stoppers for a long time, but now we have the coin embedded in the top. And this one is I don't know if you can really see it on the camera, but it has the number 10 written on the coin. And this is a lovely metal hefty piece. This is the sort of thing where, like, I would say the packaging would justify a price hike. The 10-year age statement would justify a price hike. And yet Garryana 10 is still $150 like Garryana has always been. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, first for the packaging, we had a lot of discussion about it, but also wanting to bring it back into the family of our whiskeys, so it looked related, because old Garryana labels, Solom, Calere, everything, they look really great as a set. They're very striking. It's beautiful packaging. No one would argue with that. But it didn't necessarily look like it was connected to our flagship and then now our beer and wine. So it made sense to really bring it all back together so you could see that they were all from the same family. Of course, very different liquid inside, but they're related. So we have our diamond, we have the foiling, and we've upgraded on all of our packaging to have just like more foiling. This is like for packaging nerds, if anybody cares. I don't know that anybody does, but there's a lot more foiling on there and everything to really make stuff pop on the shelf. But we definitely wanted to add the wood ring back in. That was, I certainly asked for that as a Westland geek for many, many years, to really indicate what's in the bottle. But that was agreed upon by everyone that was going to be the right way to go. And then having on the bottom like another explanation about like, okay, this is our 10th edition and here's a little bit more about it. Because you'll also notice that on the back, there's a little bit more of a description on the front and the back of what is in the bottle. We thought that was an important refresh as well, to just be a little bit more clear about what was there so people knew what to expect. And we wanted to, because it is 10 years old. Yeah.
And that fits in really nicely with the labeling on the single casks, which have that bottom panel with the extra info.
Yeah. Definitely some hints taken from that. So it looks, they all belong together, right? But with having the upgraded cork as well, that was something we're looking at, just how do we make this packaging just a little bit more premium, because it's an age statement for us. And that's a big deal. And we still think that age is just a number. We still can deliver amazing whiskey that is 3 years old, 4, 5, whatever. We fully believe in that. And we've been doing it for a long time, but it is something to mark, right? That it's something really special for us. And there are other American single malts that are doing, that have been making whiskey that long as well, but it's still a newer thing in American single malt. And we just wanted to mark that for us, that it was really special. And especially, the 10 years of Garryana doing it. We're like, okay, well, we have to do it for that. That's pretty clear reasoning there. So it made it sort of extra exciting on our side.
I remember sort of fall last year, we started seeing these labels come on TTB for the higher age statement American single malts, the 8-year, the 10-year, and so on. And people started saying this is going to be the year of the high age statement American single malt, which is perfectly timed with the ratification of the American single malt definition. Really glad to see that Westland has not been left out of the double-digit age statement thing. I mean, I guess I should have predicted, right? I feel like this is one of those things that in retrospect you've got to like, it just feels like a thing you should have predicted, right? Garryana has been around for 10 years. and we know that there's Westland liquid that is almost 10 years old, because Lost Lantern released one a couple days shy. And you put the dots together and you go, you know what would be a really nice thing to do? If Garryana 10th edition was a 10-year, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah. And yet I didn't see it coming. I'll be the first to admit. And I'm not sure if anybody that I know that covers Westland and American single malt would have necessarily bet on this particular outcome without being able to choose it from a menu. But as soon as you say it, Westland Garryana 10 is going to be a 10-year, it just makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of discussion around it. It wasn't a for sure thing, but I will say that we did have that in mind when Nora and Adam did call us and tell us about the whiskey that they were going to do. That was going to be, they were like, we're doing this 10-year-old collection and we'd like to do the Westland cask that we have. And we had a discussion with them and they very kindly offered, they're like, you know what, we want to do 9.99. We think that would actually be great. And it's a good story all around to explain like what is the significance of 10 years and not, but then it also allows us to have the age statement kind of reveal for that. And so it's just one of those little tidbits that's super fun to discuss in retrospect of how one small the American single malt industry is and how we're all friends. So it's
it's a very respectful. Competition is so far from, I think most people that we talk to don't like think about other brands as being like, don't give them business because that hurts us. Like nobody's thinking that way, right? Everybody's thinking, what can I do to help the whole category get better?
Yeah, I mean, we're a niche category getting bigger. Recognize that makes a big difference, but we're still a small category.
Yeah, and everybody working together to grow the pie.
Yeah. It's and I think it's because also that everybody is doing something so different, which I think is super cool, right? Like I'm still a nerd about all of those, and we go off and get to visit other distilleries and get to hang out with them and hear about what they're doing. I get excited about it. I'm a fan of it. It's not thinking about, oh, what is this going to take away from our sales? Because we have something else we're saying. We have something else that we're promoting. So we're not actually stepping on each other's toes so much. And I think that's something really important that I like to talk about, especially when I travel around the world and talk about American single malt and Westland's place in it, is that we all have very different flavor profiles. Even those of us who are in similar regions, we are saying something different. Our whiskey does not taste the same. American single malt never tastes the same across the board. I mean, you look at Virginia, you look at McCarthy's, you look at us, you look at Del Bach, you look at Westward, you look at Balcones, like
Cedar Ridge.
None of those Stranahan's, none of those taste the same, right? Like completely
absolutely
different.
Right. That list you just made, I make that list every single time because everyone's like, hey, what are the different extremes of flavors in American single malt? What would you recommend? I'll be like, well, here's a list of, they're all different. Which one do you want to know more about?
Yeah. And like, I will tell you extensive information about each of them and why they're cool. So everybody's got
definitely what we like to do here for sure. Okay. So we have 15 minutes left. And I had a cool thing in mind that goes in with our usual bit, Phil. So I want to get a jump on this because we want to let it settle for a little bit. So Anna, what we do, and I was gonna laugh that if we do this in front of a master blender, I always feel like we're committing some great crime.
You're gonna blend 2 whiskeys together, aren't you?
We're gonna blend 3 whiskeys together because we have 3 whiskeys on the docket for tonight.
My God.
And that's what we do. That's our bit.
Great. It's your whiskey. You can do whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah. It was very gratifying to watch Amanda Beckwith very
died a little
very
inside.
Carefully do the like suddenly very neutral phase.
I mean, so here's something else that I will tell you that will probably get you even a little bit more excited about the blend that you're just about to do is while we have no plans for this, there are a lot of different things that we have in our rack house, as I have probably indicated to you multiple times in our discussions off camera. We have at least 65 different cask types. We have all of these different malt bills that we use, a lot of our local barley and our local peat, etc. And I did get to try. Shane pulled a sample of a local barley in a Garryana cask. Or excuse me, peated, our local peated barley in a Garryana cask. So if you think about like hyper terroir, and let me tell you, it was awesome. It was so good. And there are a few of my delightful friends that we've already discussed here on the podcast, as it were. They were able to try it.
One Nation Under Whiskey mentioned.
I know. I was like, oh, because of them, I can't say it right anymore.
The podcast.
The podcast. Because, yeah, so we got to try this basically Solum liquid in a Garryana cask. Mm-hmm. It was gorgeous. You're like, oh, this is so cool. And I don't know when and if we will ever get to release that, but it's something that we do in fact have. So
when I first said, oh, we're going to blend these 3 casks together in front of Shane, I am definitely not going to be on Westland's media list anymore. But then I realized, actually, I've been saying this since that tasting I did in 2020. Where Calere was the second series in the Outpost range, and we knew, I believe they were already talking about the Pacific Northwest peated version as well at the same time. So there was the Pacific Northwest wood, Pacific Northwest grown barley, and Pacific Northwest peat. And I asked then, and I've kept asking at least once a year, somebody at the distillery that I know ever since, when are you going to do the capstone project of the Outpost series where you put them all together? And then I just realized that's what we're doing tonight. We're doing it for you.
You're like, fine, you won't make me that bottle, I will make it. Be like, you know what, that's yours to make. Have a great time. I don't have the third one, but I have to pour a little bit more. I can do the 2 of them.
You could go grab a Calere. You certainly have some. Probably.
I absolutely do, but that's okay.
Okay, so let me actually talk about what it is that we're drinking, and maybe we only have a few minutes to spend on each one of these now at this point. So we've talked about Westland Garryana 10. That's the feature of tonight, but we also have the single cask 3520, which is an 8-year-old Alba barley, second fill Cooper's Reserve, which I believe means it held Westland before. So it's a second fill, basically Calere first edition, cask strength, but older.
Yep. So it has the Alba barley, which is a six row winter varietal. But yes, it is Calere 1 that has now gone off to college and come back. And
this is a fantastic bottle by itself, which I guess unless I pour another glass, I'm not tasting it by itself. But
it's so great. Shane and I were just talking about this last week, that on paper I was kind of like, really? Like, that seems a little boring, but okay. And then after trying it, oh my gosh, this is absolutely stunning, because it really shows off just what that single varietal with some time, what it can do. And that I think that stands up to like Highland Scotches, no question, because it's just delicate but still full of flavor and just delightful to drink. And it was a pleasant surprise. So anytime we had anyone come in to the cask room, or excuse me, into the tasting room, I'd say, okay, you guys have to try this. They're like, what is this? I'm like, just try it. It's great.
This was the staff favorite, but not necessarily the visitor favorite, as I understand.
That's sort of the challenge with any of these barley varietals, is they're not as sparkly and easy to explain necessarily as a fun cask finish like Garryana is, or, with Solum it being local peat or something like that. It doesn't jump off the page on paper, but it certainly flavor-wise absolutely delivers. So I think it's a great whiskey and a good win for people who are, nerds and interested in that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
but you know what's really funny? For the nerds, it did jump off of paper. People saw your post on Instagram, and I think 3 different people, like within a day, reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you go to Westland and get this hand fill for me and hold it until I come visit you?"
We love a mule. That's great.
So everyone was like, "Wow, that's 8-year-old Kaleri first edition cask strength. I need that." Right? That's how everybody read. The nerds read that spec that way.
Yeah.
And it really, I mean, and it holds up to, like, you're putting it on a pedestal when you're saying that. Like, Kaleri 1 was the significant whiskey for me. That's basically my first taste of American single malt. And so having this now on my shelf, and I wish I had a backup. I only got one for myself, and I regret that because they're gone now.
Yeah.
But this is a really, I think it's an incredible whiskey. And especially $150 for Kaleri was always a bit of a squeeze for me. It's like, it's a little on the simple side. Like, I really, really appreciate the geekery behind what the Kaleri series is, but it never, like, on flavor, right? And as a whiskey reviewer, I always am like, what's the flavor? What's the price for flavor value performance of this whiskey? And for Kaleri, the value was never there for me personally, but this redeems it. This proves the project was worth it.
So we only needed to wait that long. So, okay.
Noted.
Noted. I mean, we still have a lot of the boutique varietals, as we call them, those different varietals. We have a lot of that in the rack house. So projects like that will come out. We have the whiskey. There's always more whiskey. Okay. So did you do the blend yet?
We did the blend. We're letting it sit for a few minutes because you gotta.
Well, I mean, these volumes, I guess I'm not too worried about it being super jumpy, but
give it like a few minutes. We're giving it like 10 minutes to settle down.
Yeah. When we do our blends, things vat for a month. So definitely would let that sit a little bit, but that's all right. All right. So I've mixed my 2 anyway.
Yeah. So, all right. And let's move on to the Solemn 3rd edition. So, because we only have a few minutes left, but we might as well talk about it because we're here.
Yeah. So this is, Solemn. So it's our local peated malt. This one is 21 cask vatting. So there are 13 casks that are 4 years old and 8 casks that are 7 years old. So there's an age range for you. And it's all still Skagit Valley malting, peated between 8 and 12 ppm. So still pretty light. But yeah, and it's a mix of the second fill Cooper's Reserve and then first fill New American Oak Cooper Select.
Now, I think I may have done this tasting in the wrong order. Because the Solemn is so delicate, and even I would say the Kaleri is so delicate, but with the 8 years of age on it, it's got some punch. It's got that sparkly fruit in it. We were talking about Garryana 10 is really moody, and I think that that single cask Alba is really bright. It's got stone fruits and just like bright, like, I don't know, like a little bit shortcake vibes, a little bit, or like cream and freshly cut fruit, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you have Solemn, which is this very reserved, like, beautiful whiskey. I've always thought Solemn ephemeral, yes, maybe. I think in this particular lineup, I think Garryana blew our palates a little bit. So Phil, you should come back to this later for sure.
This has
Northwest Peat is different. But I'll also say, in Germ's blind sample showdown, I confused it for an older Kalila. So there is some commonality there. I was like, I know there's peat in this, and I can't tell what it is, and it's none of the other Isla distilleries. So it's Kalila, because Kalila is a chameleon, right? It acts like a bunch of different things depending on who bottles it. So it was like, I don't know what it is, so I'm going to call it Kalila. I wouldn't say I mistook it. It was just like if I have to guess, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I would definitely pick some other type of, I don't know what, because but I would pick a different peated whiskey. But this I'm not. I'm getting, it's very light smoke. But the thing that I often get on our Solemns there is some fruit in there, and the peat is more vegetal in nature to me. Kind of like you're walking through a wet forest. And then there's a nuttiness that almost comes across in like a praline or something like that, which is just really different. I've not experienced that in, or maybe even like white sesame. But this one, there's kind of a mix of things going on. But I think you're right in saying it's a little bit more reserved, a little more delicate, which I like having peated whiskey that isn't necessarily assaulting your palate. Like there's a time and place for that. Don't get me wrong. I love a peat monster as much as the next person, but sometimes you want something that's a little more subtle and like sort of just like a wisp going around you instead of kind of thing.
Yeah, this is one of my go-tos when I want a lightly peated whiskey. So not to undersell this, Pacific Northwest peat from the Pacific Northwest, not just distilled here. It actually came out of the ground in Washington State in the Skagit Valley.
Shelton, Washington.
Sorry, Shelton. Skagit Valley maltings. I always get that mixed up. Yeah. So Solom 1, really piney and peppery. And when Solom 2 came out, I felt like the first edition was better. But I've changed my mind now because I've had the third edition and I see that the first edition really highlighted the peat, but it was less refined. And so second edition brought in more, I guess, first fill oak. And I don't know what the breakdown is on this one, but this one just feels like really like the most refined version of Solom so far. So the third edition is actually my favorite and recontextualizes the first to actually be my least favorite, but still super important to the series.
Or you could say they're just for different moods.
Oh yeah, that's one way to put it. Now I still have a backup bottle. I killed a bottle of the Solom first edition, and that was one that I have a backup of. So I'll get to taste what the bottle was like fresh, and we'll see if I still feel that it's no longer my favorite, because it could have been old bottle syndrome.
Well, they're very different, which I think is just really fun with that, right? Like you kind of know what to expect, but not necessarily, right? The point was not to make it the same. The point was to play with it in a different way and see how it showcases. So, yeah.
I think they all came out really well. They're all very worth the price tag for me, and especially now that the price has come down to $125. So throwing that out there for the audience, I think Solom 3 is the best one, and it's also the cheapest one. So go get you some.
Yeah, there you go. Is it time to do our blend?
Yes,
it is time to do the blend because we've got to be wrapping up here in a couple of minutes. So let's see what happens when you make the Outpost whiskey out of some arbitrarily chosen blends.
I'm gonna be real honest. I've been actually sipping on mine for a couple of minutes.
Bragger.
The Alba and the Gary 10 are fighting a lot, but the Pacific Northwest peat, I think, actually kind of plays middleman in there fairly well. I think that nice sort of gentle, calming hand of smoke helps a lot.
I get Tootsie Rolls and like strawberry lollipop kind of.
Interesting.
It's a strawberry Tootsie Pop.
I was getting like chocolate covered orange or Terry's chocolate orange.
Could be that. Something along the lines of the sort of artificially flavored fruit flavored things and chocolate, which is really interesting. I wouldn't have thought that for this blend at all.
Well, but in blending, 1 + 1 never equals 2. Like you do not know how it's going to interact, which I presume, yes, when you've done this with any blenders that comes across, but it is really interesting because that's something that in their line of work, yeah, you're like, oh yeah, I think this will support this and this will do this and lift it in this way or whatever. And you're like, oh, actually, oh my God, no, that clashes so much. Never mind. I need to try another tack. Right.
I think
it's our self-educational bit that we do. Sorry, Phil. What was that?
I think this is our best yet.
Okay.
Be interesting
to rating them because they're mostly bad.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's certainly better than sort of the best analogy I could come up with our Virginia Distillery Company blend was kind of like when you're eating a pizza and there are a bunch of different ingredients that you're getting like in different orders and different volumes, and never quite creates a cohesive unit, you know?
I think it's a good way to highlight the art of blending and doing that, right? Because you're learning while you're doing this, but going, oh, wow. Actually, what they're doing is quite cool because they need to balance all of these flavors and make it actually be cohesive, which is not as easy as it sounds. You think, I just dump a bunch of really good whiskey in a tank, it'll be fine. Like, well, no, actually, it's not quite that simple. Good ingredients do make a good final product, but if you don't balance it correctly, you're going to get something that's going to be angular or out of whack or fighting or falls apart. I think that's the things that I find the most interesting is I did a little bit of blending in the previous distillery, and like sometimes you put stuff together and go, this is it. This is going to be awesome. And then you proof it down a little bit to be bottling strength. And you're like, and that completely fell apart. Never mind. I need to go back to the drawing board and play around with it some more. So yeah. I would say that I'll be very interested to hear about your project of doing this massive blend that you're discussing, this infinity bottle, because I imagine that to be somewhat muddled in terms
I
of...
think that's how infinity bottles go, right? It's not because you're trying to get the world's best whiskey. It's that you're trying to bring together something that's meaningful in some way, like a sample of everything in your collection or a sample of everything on a theme. So for us, it's the podcast. What's shown up on the podcast, and we are going to have some rules. Like we did an episode with 6 vodkas with Caitlin Bartlemay.
Of course you did. She's made me do that too. Pardon me.
I don't think we're putting the vodkas in the infinity bottle. I think we're going to stick to just whiskey. I think we're probably going to leave out anything that's not American single malt because we've had a few of those as well. So like that narrows the field a little bit. Gets us a little bit closer to something that might be cohesive. But that said, all these blends that we've done have never been better than the sum of their parts, except maybe one. And I'll have to go look at my notes to see which one that was. And I think that was just a complete accident.
You're gonna have to tell me what that is later, but
once I figure it out, or
words.
You know, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, one of the components was a little bit too much, and what made it better was the fact that the other things moderated it a bit. Sure. So it wasn't that it was quite literally averaging out the thing we didn't like. So you could argue whether that's better than the sum of its parts or not, but like, not that there was an art of blending behind it. No, we're not very good at this. So it's always going to be. I've also been summoned for the heart out, so we got to wrap up here.
Yep.
They're always going to be not as good as what you were. If you were going to intentionally make a blend, it would turn out better than this. But that said, I really want the Outpost range bottle to exist. I want a professional blender to do the thing.
Yeah, maybe someday. You never say never. I can tell you that right now that's not in the current plans for the next year, but that doesn't mean anything. So
doesn't mean never.
Yeah.
So there was one question that was a pre-submit that we didn't quite get to, and I wonder if I could just ask you real quick.
Sure.
In a 10-year-old barrel of Garryana, how much is left after 10 years? How much is lost to the English share?
That's a great question. Shane will be able to answer that a little bit better, but I can give you some basic stats. It also depends on which cask it was. If it was some of these other ones that we had that were warped, it might be 0. We had some leakers, but otherwise, generally speaking, we lose a degree of proof a year for aging. And for, now here's a good question, actually. If it's new oak, we still would have entered it at 110 proof. So you can do the math on that. If it was reused oak, we would have put it in at 125. But, you know, that's sort of the general numbers that we can go with, but I'm not sure exactly. Shane will be able to tell you a little bit more about that for sure. So you have to get.
So we'll take that as a teaser. So for people who didn't see my Instagram announcement, this episode was originally supposed to be with Master Blender Shane Armstrong. And unfortunately we had to reschedule that at a last minute, and we'll figure that out. So there is going to be a sequel. We'll talk to Shane at some point. It's just not today. But Anna, it's been lovely having you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You were the first person I just, for the record, you were the first person I asked for tonight.
I wanted to shine the light on Shane because this is his, project he's been working on for 10 years. So it seemed only fair. But I get to talk about it anyway. So there we go.
So Plan B became Plan A, or Plan A became Plan B, which became Plan A again.
Yeah.
It's been a lovely chat. It's been great having you. And I'm going to let you go because I know you have a tight out, and so do I. So I have, naturally, as one does, I've got the Westland glass today.
Very good.
I will swap to my Garryana, which is in the single malt frontier glass. And I'll say, thank you everyone for watching. If you like what we do, please subscribe, like, share, do all the social media things. It really helps grow the podcast. If you like what we do, those are the best ways to support us. Until next time, thank you, Ana, so much for being here. We'll see you in the lodge.
Thanks.
Sláinte.